What's going on, everybody? Is 2026 off to a hot start or what? 3 days ago now, 2 days ago, in the night of January 3rd, that morning, the United States conducts a nighttime raid into Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela, to capture the president, Nicholas Maduro, and his wife, and basically escape no U.S. casualties. From what I've seen, the estimates left and right, it doesn't really seem like there's a hard number, but obviously they took out his security detail and some other military/police that were protecting him, captured him, put him in a helicopter, flew him off into the Caribbean, put him on the Iwo Jima, one of our naval ships, and then shipped him back here to the United States. And now, I believe today, he was first at a hearing for narco-terrorism charges in New York, where he's been indicted. So, big news. There's plenty of other news going on, but obviously this is the biggest thing. Crazy. I mean, while I've been paying attention to politics, geopolitics, whatever you want to say, current events in this way, I've never seen anything like this. Pretty wild. I know in Trump's first term they did something similar where they took out al-Baghdadi or whatever his name was, the ISIS leader, and just wiped him out, didn't capture him. But this was crazy. I mean, there's videos of it that were circulating all the next day of things happening in the city. There was airstrikes during the raid. They probably, I'm assuming, took out some military stuff, their air defense, whatever air defenses they had, some radar, some things like that. And I know they said during their press conference that Trump gave the day, I think it was 2 days after, so no, it had to be the 4th. It had to be yesterday. They gave a little news conference to talk about the operation and everything. But they cut the power to the city. It sounds like generally they just wiped the whole power, and then another win for air superiority. I guess it's not over yet. And they just flew in there in helicopters. I believe the main component of this was special forces, but it was the Delta Force people. And I'm wanting to, if I remember right, I think Delta Force is the same people that are Black Hawk Down. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I vaguely remember. I think that was Delta Force also. A lot of people think the SEALs are the top of the top. It sounds like Delta Force might actually be the pinnacle of the U.S. Special Forces, but who knows? Impressive, one way or the other. Now we kind of come to the aftermath. They cut the head off the proverbial snake that is Venezuela. To me, I am not going to sit here and act like I know everything there is to know about Venezuela and the geopolitics of South America. From what I do understand, and give me some grace here, this is all me kind of learning this, I know some tertiary information here and there about how he came to power and who he was in power, Chavez beforehand, and their socialist government that was before Maduro, and then into his dictatorship that he was running until a couple days ago. But from what I gathered, and I think generally is understood, Venezuela, oil-rich country, natural resource-rich country. Chavez, all throughout I guess it would have been, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, 2010, early 2010. Basically, they were able to buoy the entire country off oil exports and their oil reserves, and their socialist system was running somewhat successfully, it seemed like, in the sense of short term, they were taking all the oil money and just dumping it into social services. During oil crashes and things like that, they had problems. Chavez generally, he didn't directly oversee the downfall of Venezuela as a country, or the decline, however you want to say it. But their decisions they made as under the socialist government of Chavez seems like it pretty easily points to why the country somewhat just collapsed. So they were, at one point, I think the number is 3 million barrels a day of oil they're pumping. Right now, they're pumping like a third of that or less, probably less now even now. But they were pumping way more at one point, and then it collapsed under Maduro. But generally, the fault is of Chavez, because they're taking all their money, They weren't managing it very well, dumping it into socialist programs. Their literacy rates were going up. They're dumping it into schools. I mean, good things to dump it into generally, but the planning was not there, apparently. There's no rainy day fund or anything. The infrastructure, their oil infrastructure that they relied on completely, they just kind of let fall into disrepair. I was reading some things about oil workers going on strike. Like I said, this is very overviewy of what happened, but I think it's important because, one, Venezuela in our backyard as Americans. I know people are talking now currently about like a revival of the Monroe Doctrine. Hey, if it's our hemisphere, we run this shit. If you think that way, that's fine. I personally think, I don't know how far I'll be willing to push it, but generally I think that makes perfect sense. Like, we are a world superpower, but definitely we're the regional superpower, so I think we should be using our economic power, military power to influence it in a way that benefits us as Americans. Obviously, I don't mean just like go kill everybody else for our benefit. That would be a calculus I don't think is worth it, obviously, but there's ways that you can influence other countries politically, economically, that benefit our country, and I think we should. This kind of is right on the limit of that, it seems like, but nonetheless, we'll see how it plays out long term. But back to Venezuela generally, Chavez, I believe he died of cancer, basically appoints Maduro as the next president of Venezuela. Their infrastructure, as I was saying, was crumbling, their oil infrastructure. There's a oil crash in like around 2015, 2014, 2015, 16. Oil prices crash. Obviously, if your whole economy relies on oil and the oil prices crash, you're going to have a little bit of an issue. And they sure fucking did. And their production fell apart and their infrastructure continued to fall apart. Seems like some corruption. Maduro takes over, moves the country into a dictatorship. Dude has no idea what he's doing, it seems like, from what I read up. They're obviously people joking about it, but he was a bus driver who worked his way up through their socialist movement to become vice president, and then basically was appointed to the president by Chavez before his death, and then ran the country from then on, also through some suspect elections and things like that, but it doesn't really matter. And then under his oversight, the country basically falls from its height of its oil money and success to what it is right now. And from what I know of Venezuela, not good, I'll tell you that. I know there's been a lot of talk about the drugs. That was a big sticking point there for a while. Don't get me wrong, the drugs is not the main motivating factor of why any of this took place. But Americans are dying from drugs, and Venezuela definitely is having drugs brought into the country across the Gulf from Venezuela to the United States. It's just a fact. They went through that whole thing where they're blowing up these drug boats. People up in arms about that. Me personally, I made a video about it. I don't really care. Like, if you're running drugs into the country, it's gonna kill Americans. So if they wipe you out before you get here, to be honest, I'm not that worried about it. I know people take issue with that, but it's a subject for a different day. I'll talk about it if you want me to talk about it, but not what we're doing today. And that was kind of a pretense. That oil tanker thing, we talked about that. They seized that oil tanker, kind of just slowly escalating things. The United States and Venezuela have been kind of at odds for a while now. After, I can't remember the time period, but basically when they nationalized their oil production, they seized a bunch of U.S. companies, oil companies' assets that they had put down there to drill for this oil. And we obviously had a problem with it because this was something I didn't know until this past week, as I'm kind of listening what's going on in Venezuela. All throughout Texas, we have a bunch of these special refineries that are kind of designed to handle the oil that comes out of Venezuela. What do they call it? Heavy crude. I think it's called sweet crude or heavy crude. It's basically like a nastier version of oil that requires more money, more processes to get it into a usable state. And we have refineries in Texas to handle that. They were set up there because of Venezuela generally. And when they seized all the drilling operations and stuff in Venezuela, America obviously didn't take too kindly to that, pissed everybody off. Declining relations since then. Who knows? Current day, president captured, kidnapped, abducted, brought in for terrorism charges, whatever. I think that's all just bullshit. This is basically like regime change light. I've been alive for it, but I wasn't paying attention. 9/11 happened. We go over to the Middle East. We start doing all kinds of crazy stuff in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, all these countries in the Middle East. Oil obviously involved in some way or another. Maybe not the sole reason, but definitely not a non-factor. Regime change, trying to turn these majority Muslim nations into Western democracies and things like that. I don't claim to be an expert on it, but it seems to have generally been a giant failure, dumping insane amount of money over there. And obviously they're not democratic now. So did it work? No. This is kind of a different tact. I think, I don't know, there's people on the left that are coming out and saying, hey, if you're supporting what's happening right now, you're being hypocritical because you're obviously criticizing the Middle East and things like that. I don't think it's that easy to argue that it's not really directly correlated. It's not the same. It's not apples to oranges, but it's also not apples to apples either. I mean, the Middle East halfway across the world, Venezuela right across the Gulf of Mexico, right there, energy, natural resources, direct benefit to the United States if we can flex a little military muscle, political muscle, and get some things going in our favor. I think that makes sense. I don't know. I've seen a lot of people complaining about it. Generally, it seems like this is kind of like best case. Obviously, we have to see how it works out. But you go in, no Americans die. You take the president. The new president is elected, or I think their Supreme Court confirmed this person. I think it was just the VP. Rodriguez is this lady's name. I wouldn't be surprised if she had her hand in on the whole thing and knew what was going on and kind of gave him up. Basically, and said, hey, let me take over, I'll play ball, and we can build a little bit of a relationship from there. She's part of the Maduro regime, whatever, but it seems pretty obvious that it's like, I don't think the United States comes in and just takes the president, takes Maduro, and then goes, well, all right, we'll see how this works out from now on. Like, there's obviously a plan. We'll see where it goes. Trump has, when in his press conference, came out and basically directly said, we're going to take control over Venezuela, at least temporarily, to handle the oil production and things like that. That's the obvious MO here. That is the United States MO. If you have oil, it's a meme, it's everything. If you have oil, we're going to show up on your doorstep, and obviously the U.S. military might find its way into your country. And that's generally not a great thing. Obviously, we don't have military boots on the ground. Like we didn't invade a ground invasion of Venezuela as to date, and I don't think that would be generally a good idea. But I don't know. These people criticizing things. It's kind of like you're dealing. You wanna deal in morality or you want to deal in reality, and it's like, yes, morally, is it good that we have to go to another country and kidnap the president and do, like, who knows? The country could fall into like a civil war because the president has been taken, and it could collapse and hundreds of thousands, millions of people could die, and terrible things could happen. Obviously, I hope that doesn't happen. That would be bad, and then you would come back and be like, all right, well, that was a giant fuck up on Trump's part. Like, whoever made that call, you blew it, and there should probably be some repercussions for that. But if we come through, and yeah, obviously I don't think there's going to be no collateral damage at all, but if it's minimal, but also we can open up Venezuela's oil production and it benefits everybody. Obviously it's going to benefit U.S. oil companies, it's going to benefit the stock market, it's going to benefit the United States and the current president politically, and hopefully it benefits Venezuelans as well if we open up their oil market. They obviously had money flowing in at one point when they were producing more oil. Let's get back to that point, get some money moving, and help these people out. Everybody eats, everybody benefits. Obviously, who's going to benefit more? Probably us. As an American, obviously, I don't care. That's fine. But is there a net benefit, I think, is the end result. We'll have to wait and see. You're not going to find that out in a day. It's not going to happen in a month. It's not going to happen probably in a year. It's going to take some serious time for this to develop. But overall, that's going to be the tail of the tape. That's going to be the deciding factor. Is the outcome is going to decide whether it was a good decision or not. The other people that are sitting here criticizing things, I understand generally, but it's like, have you never played and obviously I'm oversimplifying, but it's like, have you never played a strategy game in your life? Have you never did anything that was, watched any simulation of anything as far as like, how does a country be successful? Economic power, military power, political influence, political power. This is us using military power to gain some economic power. That's all it is. How do you win the game as a country? The United States has done it historically since World War II through the petrodollar. Whether you like that or not, or whether that's good, I don't know. I think there's gripes to be had with it, but generally Americans have benefited for the most part. There's obviously parts that they haven't, or that they'll sacrifice general Americans' well-being for personal gain and things like that. There's definitely things to be said there, but the way you win the game is money, natural resources, military power. That's all it is. Venezuela's right there across the ocean. They have the most oil in the world, supposedly. That's the claim. Their oil reserves are the biggest in the world. I think they have a fifth of the proven oil supply in the world, supposedly. I've seen a couple things on Twitter and things like that where people are talking like, hey, these numbers might be kind of made up and they came out under the Chavez regime, and then they kind of went through OPEC, and they've kind of been like, well, nobody's necessarily proved it, or we kind of just trust but don't verify the numbers. So another thing that remains to be seen, but they have heavy metals, they have gold, they have all kinds of things in that country as far as it's a natural resource hub. And obviously America wants a piece of the pie. There's not much more to be said about it. I'd be interested to see what you guys think. Mostly, do you think it's going to work out positively or negatively for the United States? My guess right now, positively. Like I said, I think the new president that's been appointed, installed, should you say, is going to play ball, because I don't think there's no plan going forward. So we'll see if I'm right or not. And I think over the next 5-10 years, we're going to see the aim is to get China and Russia out of there, open up oil production, and benefit the United States, bring down energy prices, maybe a little deflation in the energy, and we go from there. We'll see what happens. I hope you guys had a solid break, solid holiday, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.